Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about something that confuses a lot of people. It's one of the most commonly misunderstood concepts in HR management, and that is the exempt versus non-exempt status. Now, you may be familiar with the terms salaried or hourly employees. And while that is a generally okay kind of way to think about it, it's not exactly correct. So we're going to start with a little bit of overview of the Fair Labor Standards Act just really quickly to establish kind of what it did, because it is important to you. And then we're going to get into exempt versus non-exempt, and those are really the correct ways to look at employees. So let me digress for just a minute and let's talk about the Fair Labor Standards Act. This has been in the law for, since the 60s. So it's been around a long time. It is what establishes the minimum wage. Now, the federal minimum wage is still $7.25 per hour. That means that each employer must pay at least $7.25 an hour, with the exceptions of situations like servers who can make less per hour because they get tips. Okay. It's also the law that covers child labor and the kind of record keeping things we have to do. But one of the main things it also does is cover overtime. Before I do that, I want to go back to the minimum wage just real quickly, because there was something important I really need you to understand. The federal minimum wage is $7.25. States can determine their own minimum wage, like Colorado's is higher and Washington's is higher than that, okay? But even within the state, a city can make even a higher minimum wage law. So I like to use the example of Washington State. The minimum wage in Washington State is $17.13 an hour. That's over $9 an hour more than the federal minimum wage. But the minimum wage in Seattle is $21.30 an hour. So if you live or work in the city of Seattle, they have to pay you the $21.30 per hour versus the $17.13 an hour, which the state requires, versus the $7.25 an hour, which the federal government requires. Under the law, the employee is always entitled to the highest wage possible. So keep that in mind. It's always the highest wage, and it always benefits the employee, not the employer. Okay, overtime. This is where the exempt versus non-exempt comes in. An employee who is exempt from overtime is frequently considered a salaried employee. It's not exactly accurate, but we typically think of them that way. They get a basic salary per pay period, and it doesn't matter if they work more than 40 hours because they get this fixed and irregularly recurring pay. If they miss part of a day, they don't have that day deducted. If they work any part of the day, they get paid for the entire day, okay? Under the age of 16, there are limits on the amount of hours an employee can work. Over the age of 16, you can work as many hours as you want, but you have to be paid time and a half for any hours over 40 during the consecutive pay period. So there are some exemptions to that. People who fit in certain categories, who are often salaried employees, don't qualify for overtime pay. So we're going to look at these really quickly. So there are three basic tests, okay? So the first one is the salary test. Are they paid a consistent salary, like $1,000 a week? Or are they paid based on how much they work? If they are paid a consistent salary and it's at least $684 per week, then they might be an exempt employee. But there's more. It's not just one test, it's a second test. So they're paid on a salary basis. They're paid the same amount all the time. The next is a salary threshold test. So they have to make at least this 684. So our $1,000 a week employee meets 2 of these tests already, okay? Now, third is the duties test. And this is the thing that makes it harder for people because of the question about what am I doing? How do my job duties work for this compensation, etc. I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on this, but executives or highly compensated employees get $107,432 a year, okay? They have to have the ability to influence the employment status of other people. In other words, you have to be able to hire and fire people. You have to have direct influence on supervisory type actions. In order to be an exempt employee, there has to be a level. Now, there are some jobs that lend themselves to this professionalism, and they are typically exempt, such as doctors and lawyers and college professors and teachers, outside salespeople. So there are a lot of caveats, but here's what I will tell you. At the beginning of your work career, and that could have been when you were 15 years old, who knows, you typically are an hourly employee. Depending on the type of job you do, you may continue to be an hourly employee. Welders make really good money, but they are paid hourly typically if they work for someone else. If they're self-employed, they probably work by bidding out a job, but then they pay their welders hourly. Whereas a teacher works on a contract, and they have a set amount that they're paid in the contract for the year, okay? So these are some of the things that you need to kind of really look at to understand what is a exempt employee versus non-exempt employee. An exempt employee does not get overtime. A non-exempt employee is paid hourly and does receive overtime, okay? If you are looking for more resources, this website, the DOL agencies, overtime, wage and hour division overtime, is a great tool for you. It will give you all kinds of information about specifics. If you are questioning whether or not you should be paid as an hourly employee or you should be receiving overtime, you may not know. Here's some Q&As, a guide to the overtime laws in our specific state and other states, some fact sheets that cover a lot of information. And if you still can't find the answer and you have a question and you're not sure if you're being taken advantage of, feel free to contact me and we can kind of talk through it and see if I think you should contact the Wage and Hour Division of the Department of Labor. I am not an attorney, but I do know enough about the topic to say whether or not I think you might have a claim to talk to someone with more knowledge than me. All right, that is all for the overtime pay and the exempt versus non-exempt information. This lecture is already at 9 minutes, so have a great day.